Someone called you intimidating last week, or maybe it was last month. Perhaps it's been happening for years. The confusing part, you weren't doing anything unusual. You weren't raising your voice. You weren't taking up more space than necessary. You weren't even trying to make an impression. You were simply being yourself, and somehow that was enough to make people shift uncomfortably in their seats. This moment keeps repeating itself, doesn't it? A colleague grows quiet during a conversation. A friend suddenly seems guarded. Someone at a family gathering labels you as intense or hard to read. And each time you're left wondering, what did I do wrong? The truth is, you probably didn't do anything wrong at all. You simply existed in a way that feels natural to you, yet somehow unsettling to others. Here's the paradox that few people talk about. The most intimidating individuals are often the ones who aren't trying to be intimidating. They aren't loud. They aren't dramatic. They aren't playing the usual social games. They simply show up as their authentic selves, calm, observant, and comfortable in silence. And in a world where most people perform emotions, seek constant validation, and fill every pause with noise, your quiet authenticity becomes surprisingly powerful. Psychologists have long observed this phenomenon. When someone doesn't participate in the unspoken social dance, the small talk, the emotional mirroring, the subtle people-pleasing, it disrupts the expectations of those around them. What feels like peace to you can feel like pressure to someone else. Your comfort with silence, your refusal to escalate drama, and your ability to remain steady while others unravel. These qualities don't just stand out. They make people confront something in themselves they'd rather avoid. This is the central paradox. Your greatest strength, being genuinely yourself without performance, is often perceived as a threat. Not because you're doing anything harmful, but because you reveal simply, by existing, how much others rely on masks, noise, and approval to feel safe. In this video, we're going to explore 7 silent signs that this might be happening to you. These aren't flaws, they're patterns. And once you recognize them, you'll finally understand why certain reactions keep following you, and why none of it means you need to change who you are. Because the people who intimidate others without trying aren't broken. They're simply no longer playing the game. And that in itself changes everything. Here are 7 silent signs that you may be one of those people who intimidate others without even trying. As you read through them, notice which ones feel familiar. These aren't dramatic behaviors or conscious choices. They are simply patterns of how you move through the world. The first sign is that your silence is comfortable for you, yet deeply uncomfortable for everyone else. Most people treat silence like a problem that needs to be solved immediately. Research from psychological science shows that even a 4-second pause in conversation can trigger a measurable spike in anxiety. People feel it in their bodies and rush to fill the space, often saying things they later regret. You don't have that reflex. When you go quiet, you're thinking, processing, and taking the conversation seriously. To you, that silence is respectful and productive. To others, it feels like a verdict. They wonder what you're deciding about them, and that uncertainty makes them call you cold or intense. The second sign is that you don't engage in drama, and people read that as a threat. In most social and work environments, there is an unspoken rule: the louder and more visible your emotions, the more readable and safe you seem. When you refuse to perform that emotional theater, not because you don't feel things, but because you process before reacting, people lose their usual tools. They can't guilt you, pressure you, or predict you. One woman learned this the hard way at work. A colleague kept pushing her buttons trying to get a reaction. Instead of engaging, she calmly said 4 simple words. "I'm not your entertainment. I'm your coworker." The colleague had no idea how to respond. The usual tactics of guilt and social disapproval simply didn't work. That kind of unshakable calm unsettles those who rely on drama to feel connected. The third sign is that you ask real questions, and people feel seen before they're ready. Small talk exists for a reason. It keeps things light and signals safety, but your mind naturally seeks depth. Instead of asking how someone's weekend was, you might gently inquire about something that actually matters. Their posture changes. Their answers become careful. Later, they describe you to others as intense. You were simply curious, yet to them it felt like exposure. Research on introverted thinking styles shows that deeper minds tend to travel longer neural pathways before responding. What looks like hesitation on the outside is actually thoughtful depth. And that depth, when turned toward another person, can feel uncomfortably revealing. The fourth sign is that you stay calm when everyone else is escalating. You've learned through experience that reacting in the heat of the moment rarely helps, so you remain grounded. You respond from clarity rather than emotion. Others interpret this composure as contempt or indifference. They needed you to match their emotional intensity to feel understood, but you didn't perform that. Psychotherapists often see this pattern in introvert-extrovert conflicts. Your self-control, which you worked hard to develop, gets misread as coldness. You're not lacking feelings. You simply refuse to amplify distress to make someone else feel less alone in theirs. The fifth sign is that you read people before you say a word. Before you even speak, you notice the small things, the hesitation in someone's voice, the shift in posture, or the careful choice of words. You're not doing it intentionally to judge. Your mind simply takes in the full picture. Experts in social intelligence describe this as one of the most underestimated skills. Yet on the receiving end, people sense they're being truly seen. And being truly seen when you're not ready for it can feel unnerving. They later say there's something about you they can't quite explain. The sixth sign is that you have a natural filter, and people can sense they haven't passed it yet. You don't open up to everyone right away. Real connection costs energy, and you invest it wisely. You observe before you trust. You don't hand out warmth as if it were free. Most people feel this boundary within the first few minutes. Some respect it. Others interpret it as rejection or arrogance. What they're actually sensing is quiet self-respect, the confidence of someone who knows their own worth and doesn't give unlimited access just to make others comfortable. The seventh and deepest sign is that you don't need their approval. You can sit with your own thoughts and feel genuinely content. You can walk away from a conversation without needing to know how it landed. You can disappoint someone without it destroying your sense of self. In a world where most social dynamics run on mutual validation, your independence is quietly revolutionary. And to those who depend heavily on external approval, that freedom feels threatening. If several of these signs resonate with you, you're beginning to see the pattern. But recognition is only the beginning. What many people don't talk about is the hidden cost of carrying these qualities in a world that doesn't always understand them. Recognizing these 7 patterns can feel validating at first. You finally have words for something you've sensed for years. But recognition brings another layer, one that's often quieter and heavier. Living with these qualities day after day carries a hidden cost that many people never see from the outside. The most immediate cost is the constant weight of being misunderstood. When people label you as cold, intense, or unapproachable, it doesn't just sting in the moment, it accumulates. Friends pull back. Colleagues hesitate to include you in casual conversations. Family members describe you as difficult to get close to, even though you long for real connection just as much as anyone else. Over time, this creates an invisible wall. You find yourself in rooms full of people yet still feel profoundly alone, not because you want distance, but because others have already decided who you are. There is also the exhausting pressure to soften yourself. You may have caught yourself dimming your natural way of being, forcing more small talk, manufacturing reactions, or offering reassurance you don't fully feel simply to make others comfortable. Each time you do this, a small piece of authenticity slips away. You've learned that being fully yourself often comes at a social price, so you perform adjustments. The irony is painful. The very traits that make you steady and deep become the ones you occasionally hide just to avoid making someone else uneasy. Many people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s describe this as a slow, quiet grief, the grief of constantly translating yourself for a world that speaks a different emotional language. Another hidden cost appears in relationships. Romantic partners sometimes interpret your calm as emotional unavailability. Friends may drift away because they feel they can't read you, or because your boundaries make them feel rejected. At work, you might be overlooked for leadership roles, not because you lack ability, but because people find you hard to connect with. One man shared how he lost a close friendship of 15 years. His friend kept pushing for dramatic emotional exchanges during conflicts, needing him to match that intensity. When he responded with clarity instead of chaos, the friend eventually withdrew later, telling others he was too cold. Stories like this are common. Your strength becomes the very reason some connections cannot endure. Then there are the private moments of self-doubt. Late at night, you might wonder if something is truly wrong with you. Are you missing some essential warmth that other people seem to possess naturally? Have you become too guarded, too independent, too different? These questions arise because the feedback you receive is so consistent. When so many people react to you the same way, it's natural to turn the mirror inward and question yourself. This self-examination is honest, but it can also be painful, especially when you know deep down that your intentions have never been harsh. Psychologically, these costs make sense. Human beings are wired for connection and belonging. When you disrupt the usual social exchange of validation and emotional mirroring, you unintentionally expose other people's insecurities. They don't always respond with awareness. Instead, they project discomfort onto you. What feels like rejection is often their anxiety meeting your self-sufficiency. You become a living reminder that not everyone needs the same social scaffolding they do, and for some that reminder is deeply unsettling. The hidden costs are real. The loneliness, the misunderstandings, the energy spent navigating a world that rewards performance over presence. These experiences can leave scars, yet they also point to something important. Carrying these traits is not evidence that you are flawed. It may simply mean you have developed a level of emotional independence that many people have not. The very qualities that create distance with some are the same ones that allow for profound depth with others. Understanding the cost is painful, but it is also clarifying. It prepares the ground for a gentler truth, one that moves beyond recognition and pain into something more liberating. Because what if these patterns are not a burden to fix, but a quiet strength that deserves to be understood and honored? The final part of this journey invites you to reframe everything you've discovered so far. Here's the deeper truth waiting on the other side of the hidden costs. You are not cold. You are not broken. You are not too much or not enough. You are simply a person who has stopped performing the emotional games that most people rely on to feel safe. That single difference changes how the world responds to you, but it does not mean something is wrong with you. Being called intimidating is rarely about you. It is often the discomfort of someone meeting a person they cannot easily control, predict, or emotionally manage. Your silence, your calm, your depth, and your independence act like a mirror. They reflect back to others their own reliance on drama approval and constant validation. When the usual social tools stop working, many people don't examine themselves. Instead, They label the mirror as the problem. This is not your burden to carry. It is their unexamined insecurity meeting your self-sufficiency. Reframing this experience brings genuine freedom. Your way of being is not a social flaw. It is a hard-earned form of emotional maturity. The ability to sit with silence, to ask real questions, to remain steady under pressure, and to protect your energy are strengths, not defects. In a world that rewards loudness and performance, your quiet authenticity is rare. The right people, those who have done their own inner work, will not find you intimidating. They will find you refreshing, safe, and deeply trustworthy. They will stay not because you changed yourself, but because they are comfortable sitting beside someone who is comfortable with themselves. This understanding does not mean you will never face misunderstanding again. It does mean you no longer have to shrink or doubt your worth when it happens. You can choose relationships where your natural way of being is respected rather than resisted. You can lead with calm confidence instead of performing warmth to earn approval. Most importantly, you can finally release the exhausting question of, "What's wrong with me?" and replace it with a quieter, kinder one. Who am I when I stop apologizing for being myself? You were never meant to be everyone's cup of tea. You were meant to be deeply nourishing to those ready for real connection. The people who truly matter will see the warmth behind your reserve, the care behind your questions, and the strength behind your silence. They will not ask you to become smaller so they can feel bigger. They will grow taller simply by standing near you. Thank you for staying with this until the end. If any of these 7 signs touched something deep inside, you know that you are not alone. Drop in the comments which pattern resonated the most. And if you know someone who has carried the quiet weight of being called intimidating for years, share this with them. Sometimes simply hearing your experience explained clearly is the beginning of healing. You are not intimidating because something is wrong with you. You are intimidating to some because you no longer need them to tell you who you are. And that in the end may be one of the most powerful things a person can become.